There is a silent panic that often arrives in the middle of our lives. It doesn't usually happen when we are busy or distracted. It happens in the quiet moments. It happens at 3 a.m. when the house is still, the traffic outside has died down, and you are staring at the ceiling. A heavy thought creeps in, uninvited and cold. It whispers, "Is this it? Did I miss my chance?" Maybe you look in the mirror in the morning and you trace lines that weren't there 5 years ago. You look at your career, your relationships, or the number in your bank account, and you feel a deep, aching regret. You feel like the protagonist in a movie that is already half over, and you realize, with a sinking heart, that you don't like the plot. And the terrifying part is that you wrote it. Society has a way of amplifying this panic. We are told from a young age that starting over is a young person's game. We are told that life is a trajectory, an arrow shooting straight up, and that by the time you reach 40, 50, or 60, the semen should be dry. You should have it all figured out. If you don't, you have failed. So, when that feeling of being lost hits you in midlife, you don't just feel confused, you feel ashamed. You feel like you are standing on the wrong train platform, watching the express train to success fade into the distance without you. But what if I told you that this feeling of being lost, this heaviness you are carrying, is not a sign of defeat? What if I told you that this specific ache is actually a signal? It is the exact signal that your real life is about to begin. Today, I want to ask you to take a deep breath. I want you to mentally stop the clock. We need to talk about the art of reinventing yourself, specifically when you feel it is far too late to do so. To understand how we move forward, we first have to understand the trap we are currently standing in. Psychologists have a name for this specific type of pain. They call it occupational regret, though I think it goes much deeper than just our jobs. It spills over into our souls. It's a cycle, and it starts with a trigger. Maybe you saw an old friend from college get a massive promotion on LinkedIn. Maybe you were standing in line at a coffee shop and realized you couldn't afford the latte you wanted. Or maybe it was just a quiet Tuesday morning commute on the I-95 where you suddenly realized you have been driving the same road to the same building for 20 years. And you don't know why anymore. This trigger activates something dangerous in the human brain called the sunk cost fallacy. It's a cognitive trap that convinces us we cannot change course simply because of the time we have already spent. It feels like sitting at a poker table. You have lost a mountain of chips. You know the hand you are holding is terrible, but you keep playing, you keep betting, simply because you have been sitting in that chair for 6 hours. You are afraid to walk away because walking away feels like admitting that those 6 hours were a waste. So, we stagnate. We freeze. We tell ourselves that because we studied law, we must be lawyers until we die. Because we made a mistake 10 years ago, we must pay for it the next 10. We treat our past like a prison sentence instead of a lesson. But here is where the story shifts. Here is where the science offers us a lifeline that our emotions try to hide. For decades, we believed a convenient lie. Scientists and doctors used to tell us that the human brain developed until about age 25, and then it stopped. They thought the adult brain was like hardened concrete, fixed, rigid, and unchangeable. If you didn't learn the language, or build the habit, or change your personality in your 20s, well, hard luck. But modern neuroscience has discovered something beautiful, something that should give you immense hope. It is called neuroplasticity. Found is that the brain is not a static machine. It is a living garden. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself, to physically form new neural connections throughout your entire life. It doesn't matter if you are 45 or 75. Every time you learn a new skill, every time you disrupt a routine, every time you choose to think a new thought, you are physically rewiring the structure of your mind.
There was a study in 2009 that showed changes in the brain could be seen after just 15 months of musical training. The brain literally reshaped itself to accommodate the new passion. This means that the feeling of being stuck is not a biological reality. It is a psychological illusion. The hardware of your mind is ready to upgrade. It is waiting for you. It is only the software, our old beliefs, that is outdated. So, if our brains are built for change, if we are biologically designed to adapt and grow until our final breath, why is it so terrifying? Why do we paralyze ourselves with the question, what if I fail? Why do we choose the pain of regret over the pain of discipline? The answer lies in what the famous psychologist Carl Jung called the shadow. There is a specific reason why the second half of life feels so heavy. It isn't because we are old. It is because we are carrying a backpack full of unlived life, repressed dreams, and old masks that no longer fit our faces. To move forward, we don't need to add more to our plate. We need to learn how to let go. We need to open that backpack and look into the shadow.
Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who mapped the hidden territories of the human soul, had a beautiful metaphor for this exact moment. He described life as having a morning and an afternoon. In the morning of life, our 20s and 30s, our primary job is expansion. We are biological creatures driven to secure a place in the world. We build a career, we find a partner, we buy a house, we try to make our parents proud. To do this, we construct what Jung called the persona. The persona is a mask. It isn't fake, exactly. It is a necessary compromise between who we really are and what society expects us to be. It is the reliable accountant, the perfect mother, or the stoic provider. We spend decades polishing this mask. We wear it so often that we eventually forget it is something we put on. We start to believe the mask is our face. But there is a cost to this construction. For every piece of ourselves that we polish and display in the window, there is another piece, a messy, wild, or creative piece that we have to hide in the basement. This basement is what Jung called the shadow. When we hear the word shadow, we usually think of something dark or evil. We think of our anger, our jealousy, or our shame. And yes, those things are there. But for the person who feels they have wasted their life, the shadow holds something else. It holds the golden shadow. It holds the unlived life. It holds the musician you stopped being because you needed a real job. It holds the adventurer you silenced because you needed to be responsible. It holds the deep emotional vulnerability you buried because you had to be strong. This explains why the crisis hits us in the afternoon of life. Around 40 or 50, the biological pressure to build starts to fade. The sun begins to lower. The energy changes. Suddenly, the persona, that heavy mask we spent 20 years perfecting, starts to feel suffocating. It feels tight. The things that used to satisfy you, the promotion, the new car, the applause, suddenly taste like ash in your mouth. You aren't going crazy. You are simply waking up. The crisis you are feeling is actually a protest. It is the shadow banging on the basement door, demanding to be let out. It is the unlived parts of you screaming, "Don't forget about us. We are still here." Most people panic when this happens. They try to patch the cracks in the mask. They buy the sports car or get the plastic surgery, trying to drag the energy of the morning into the afternoon. But Jung argued that we cannot live the afternoon of life according to the program of the morning. For what was great in the morning will be little at evening, and what in the morning was true will at evening have become a lie. The goal of the second half of life is not to build more. It is to become whole. This is the process of individuation. It is the act of taking off the mask and going down into the basement to retrieve what you left behind. It is about integrating the shadow. When you look back at the last 20 years and say, "I wasted them," you are looking at it through the lens of the persona. You are judging yourself based on external metrics, money, status, awards. But if you look at it through the lens of the soul, nothing was wasted. The morning was necessary to build the container. Now, in the afternoon, you get to fill it with something real. You have not run out of time. You have simply finished the first act. The curtain has just come down. The audience is waiting. And now you have a choice. You can replay the first act again wearing a costume that no longer fits, or you can write a new script for the second act. But how do we do that? How do we actually rewrite the script when we are terrified of the uncertainty? To do that, we have to look at failure completely differently. We have to turn to the ancient Stoics and a concept they used to bulletproof their minds against the fear of starting over.
If we are going to write a new script for the second half of our lives, we have to confront the invisible wall that stops most of us before we even pick up the pen. That wall is the fear that our past has already ruined our future. We look at our wasted years and we see them as a deficit, a debt that can never be repaid. We think, if I start now, I'm starting from zero while everyone else is at mile 100. This is where we need the ancient Stoics. Men like Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the known world but struggled with the same anxieties we do. Or Seneca, who faced exile and death with a calm pulse. The Stoics had a profound way of dealing with the fear of failure. They believed that we suffer more in our imagination than in reality. When you are terrified to reinvent yourself, to go back to school at 40, to start the business at 50, to leave the toxic marriage at 60, what you are really afraid of is the surprise of failure. You are afraid that the world will laugh or that you will prove your inner critic right. But the Stoics practiced something called negative visualization. They would look the worst-case scenario directly in the eye. So, let's do that. What if you try to change and you fail? What if you pivot and it's hard? The Stoic response is good, because now you are no longer dealing with the ghost of what if. You are dealing with reality, and reality can be managed. Marcus Aurelius wrote that obstacles are not things to be avoided, they are the fuel. He said, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This means your wasted years are not a hindrance to your reinvention. They are the unique material required for it. The boredom you felt in that corporate job, that is the fuel you need to understand why autonomy matters. The pain of a failed relationship, that is the wisdom you need to build a better one. You are not starting from scratch. You are starting from experience. But there's a deeper, more difficult step than just accepting failure. We have to learn to accept the past we regret. This brings us to one of the most powerful and challenging concepts in philosophy given to us by Friedrich Nietzsche. He called it amor fati, the love of one's fate. Nietzsche didn't just want us to tolerate our past. He didn't want us to just get over it. He wanted us to love it. He challenged us to look at every mistake, every heartbreak, every year we spent sleepwalking through life and say, yes, this too was necessary. Why? Because you are the sum total of those moments. You cannot rip out the pages of the chapters you dislike without destroying the book. If you hadn't walked that long, wrong path for 10 years, you wouldn't be the person sitting here today, possessing the wisdom and the hunger to seek something true. Nietzsche famously said, "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity." This is the antidote to regret.
Regret is a refusal to accept reality. It is an argument with the past, and it is an argument you will always lose. Amor fati is the radical acceptance that your wasted time was actually your tuition. You paid a high price for your wisdom, yes, but now that you own it, you might as well use it. Think of it like a hiker who took a wrong turn and walked 5 miles in the wrong direction. When he finally realizes his mistake and finds the right path, he has 2 choices. He can sit on a rock and scream at the map, crying about the lost time and the sore legs. Or he can look at his legs, realize they are stronger because of the extra 5 miles, and use that strength to climb the mountain that is now in front of him. You are that hiker. The sun is still up. Your legs are strong. The wrong turn is part of your story, but it is not the end of the hike. The path is still there, waiting for your boots. But knowing this philosophically is one thing. Doing it practically is another. How do we actually take that first step when the world expects us to stay in our lane? How do we navigate the awkwardness of being a late bloomer? For that, we need to look at the psychology of the pivot.
So, we have accepted the past. We have stopped fighting with the ghost of who we used to be. Now comes the question that usually paralyzes people. Okay, but what do I do? When we think about reinventing ourselves in midlife, we tend to imagine a Hollywood movie montage. We think we have to walk into our boss's office today, flip the desk, quit our job, sell the house, and move to a yurt in Patagonia. We think reinvention requires a demolition crew, and because that is terrifying and frankly irresponsible, we do nothing. We retreat back to safety. But the most successful reinventions are rarely explosions. They are evolutions. In the study on occupational regret we talked about earlier, researchers identified different types of people. One group they called the stagnators. These are the people who feel the regret but are too afraid to move, so they just sit in the acid of their own unhappiness until it corrodes them. But there was another group, the explorers. Explorers didn't blow up their lives. They simply started opening small doors. They understood a critical psychological concept introduced by Erik Erikson called generativity. Erikson argued that in the middle of our lives, our primary drive shifts. We no longer just want to achieve, we want to contribute. We want to make things that last. We want to be useful. When we can't do that, we feel stagnant. So, the explorer doesn't ask, how can I become a billionaire by next Tuesday? They ask, where can I plant a seed today that might grow into something meaningful? History is filled with explorers who bloomed late, not because they were lucky, but because they were willing to be beginners when everyone else was trying to be experts. Take Julia Child, for example. We know her as the icon of French cooking, but until her late 30s, she couldn't cook. She worked in advertising and intelligence. She was, by her own admission, a bit lost. She didn't pick up a whisk seriously until she was nearly 40. She didn't publish her famous cookbook until she was 50. If she had followed the timeline society gave her, she would have said, well, I'm 40 now, too late to learn a completely new, complex skill. Instead, she simply followed a curiosity. She didn't try to be famous, she tried to be good. Or consider Colonel Sanders. We see his face on buckets of chicken everywhere, but we forget the story. He was a steamboat pilot, a railroad fireman, a farmer, and a failure at almost all of them. He didn't franchise Kentucky Fried Chicken until he was 62. He was driving around the country, sleeping in his car in his 60s, trying to sell his recipe. I am not telling you these stories to promise you that you will become a celebrity chef or a fast food tycoon. I am telling you this to break the illusion of the deadline. These people didn't have a master plan. They had a growth mindset. They believed that their capacity to learn didn't expire. This brings us to a beautiful perspective from Taoist philosophy that heals the anxiety of being late. In the West, we are obsessed with the destination. We treat life like a highway.
If we miss an exit or if we get a flat tire, we panic because we aren't at the goal yet. We feel behind. But Taoism views life not as a highway, but as a river. A river doesn't have a schedule. It doesn't worry about being late to the ocean. It simply flows. It navigates around rocks. It changes shape. It moves fast, then slow. The Taoists say the shape of life is the meaning of life. This means that your reinvention isn't about reaching a new finish line where you are finally happy. It is about changing the way you walk today. So, here is the practical strategy. I call it the 10% pivot. Don't quit your job tomorrow. Don't abandon your responsibilities. Instead, reclaim 10% of your time. If you are awake for 16 hours a day, that's just over 90 minutes. Take those 90 minutes and give them to the shadow, to that thing you love but ignored. Write the book for 90 minutes, learn the code, paint the canvas, consult on the side. For the other 90% of the day, you can keep wearing the mask of the responsible adult, but in that 10%, you are building a raft. Over a year, that 10% compounds, it grows. Eventually, the raft becomes a boat, and one day you might find that the boat is strong enough to step onto fully, leaving the old shore behind without fear. You don't need a leap of faith, you just need a bridge. But there is one final piece to this puzzle. As you start to build this bridge, you will realize something profound about the wasted years and the scars you carry. You will realize they're not ugly. They're actually the most beautiful part of you.
There is a Japanese art form that I think about often, especially on days when I feel broken or behind. It is called Kintsugi. In the West, when we break a valuable bowl or a vase, we do one of two things. We either throw it in the trash, deeming it ruined, or we try to repair it with clear superglue, desperately trying to hide the cracks to make it look perfect again. We try to pretend the break never happened. But in Japan, the philosophy is different. When a piece of pottery breaks, the master craftsman doesn't throw it away. He doesn't hide the damage. Instead, he mixes the lacquer with powdered gold, silver, or platinum. He rejoins the broken pieces with this illuminating metal. The result is stunning. The bowl is no longer perfect in the traditional sense. It is covered in veins of gold. But here is the profound part. That bowl is now considered more beautiful and more valuable than it was before it was broken. It has a history. It has withstood a shock and survived. It has been transformed. This is the metaphor for your life. When you sit there at 3 a.m. regretting the years you wasted, you are looking at your life like a Westerner looks at a broken bowl. You see the cracks, the failed marriage, the career you hated, the time you spent lost. You think you are ruined. You think you are damaged goods. But you are missing the gold. The wisdom you gained from those years of struggle, that is the gold. The resilience you built by surviving the dark times, that is the gold. The empathy you now have for others who are lost, that is the gold. A person who has never failed, who has walked a perfect straight line from age 20 to age 60 is pristine. They are unbroken, but they are also often shallow. They have never had to rebuild themselves. You, on the other hand, have the opportunity to become a work of Kintsugi. Your reinvention will not be despite your past, it will be because of it. You are not starting from zero. You are starting from a place of deep, complex richness that a 20-year-old simply cannot possess. So, let's go back to that question we started with. Is it too late? Science tells you no. Your brain is ready to rewire itself right now. Philosophy tells you no. Your past was the necessary path to this very moment of realization. History tells you no. The world is filled with people who bloomed in the autumn of their lives. The only thing that can make it too late is if you choose to stay in the dark, staring at the cracks, refusing to pick up the gold lacquer. The Chinese have a proverb that you have probably heard, but I want you to really hear it today. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Don't spend another night mourning the tree you didn't plant. Go outside right now, today, and plant the seed. Water it with that 10% of your time. Protect it with your new mindset. You haven't wasted your life. You have just been gathering the materials to build a masterpiece. I want to hear from you. In the comments below, I want you to be brave. Tell me, if you decided to stop being afraid of your age or your past, what is the one thing you would start doing today? Let's declare it together. If this video helped you find a little bit of light, please like it so it can find others who are sitting in the dark. And consider subscribing to join us on this journey. It is not too late. It is just time. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.